The real reasons why Colm cut his fingers off. A deep dive into the Banshees of Inisherin, one of the best movies of 2022. One can say that this story is a metaphor for the Irish Civil War, as the conflict between friends Colm and Padraic might present parallels with that period, with themes related to conflict, separation, treaties, suffering and death. But it might also offer other layers of meaning. So, here is my take on it. When the story begins, we don't have much information about Colm and his past. So we have to speculate, based on what we see and hear from what the story shows us, and intuit deduce from it. His friend Padraic also seems to not know much about him, only externalizations. Note the scenes where he observes through the windows, maybe an indication that he only knows Colm from the outside. They usually meet at the pub, so the day Colm doesn't show up, Padraic have the chance to enter his house, his internal world, maybe for the first time. Looking and touching the objects with curiosity. So, from what we can gather, Colm is already in despair before the story begins, as the final conversation between him and the priest reveals. Most likely he is dying, hence his preoccupation with legacy. But besides music, there are other things he seems interested in, as we see by the objects in his house, puppets and theater masks, which are symbols for manipulation, narrative, characters, and for acting, deceiving, shadow self. Using this information, we can picture two scenarios, one where Colm was acting to be a nice person but in reality was using Padraic as a puppet friend all along just to entertain himself. The idea of a coming death created an urgency in him to leave a musical legacy with the following decisions: to end his distraction playtime with Padraic, and to let go the mask of niceness. So what unfolds is a sacrifice of his reputation and the unveiling of his true selfish and manipulative nature. On a deeper and noble second scenario, his legacy would be to leave behind a free and mature human being. In this case, the real manipulation of Padraic by the puppet master Colm started after he knew he was going to die. And the selfishness and craziness performed was just the acting needed to complete his final play. Here, Colm sacrifices himself in order to provide the means, freedom, for his friend to reach his potential. This sounds like too much of a philosophical stretch, but the director Martin McDonagh already have done this in his film In Bruges, with the same pair of actors. In the first scenario, Colm wants to get some peace before dying to create his musical legacy, and to get that needs to set his puppet friend Padraic go. Note that the strings of the puppeteer makes him also tied to his puppet. He is also not free. So, he need to end this codependent dynamic fast, and at all costs, even by cutting his own fingers off, giving away his manipulative power as a puppeteer, a painful action which Colm does without demonstrating it, showing how sure he is of his intentions regarding setting himself free, and in the process, Padraic too. Padraic is just a toy in the hands of a puppeteer, and is not in control of his own narrative, at least during the beginning. He also does not know who he really is. By setting Padraic free of the controlling strings, Colm gives Padraic his agency back, and as a consequence, allows him to discover other facets of his self that would reveal the shadows behind the mask of being nice. Note the scene when he puts a mask while visiting Colm's house, and later when he breaks his image on the mirror. He doesn't like what he became. Colm even says that he likes Padraic better now that he is behaving more freely. But Padraic, like a son who doesn't understand why his father is abruptly cutting ties with him, feels abandoned and angry, and still tries to set things back to the old dynamics when his puppeteer had all the power, and his life as a puppet was simpler. Note the scene where Padraic says that Colm can use whatever powers he has to stop him from burning his house. But when the donkey dies, things get out of plan, and Padraic burns Colm's house, a demonstration that now he also has the power to affect the fate of others, even to decide who lives or dies. There is a real banshee in the story, the old lady that announces the coming of death. She is the one that uses the stick hook. In old-time stage plays, the stick hook was used to get characters out of the stage when their time was up, and it is the same within this story. But here there is another puppet master controlling the lives of all characters, God. He is the one really deciding who lives and dies, even the most innocent ones, like the donkey and Dominic. Note that Dominic is the one who finds the banshee's hook and asks about its purpose. They are all his characters, and the island is God's stage. During one evening in which Padraic encounters the old lady, she reveals that maybe even 2 deaths might happen, but she is still uncertain of who. As she is only the collector, not the decider. Later on the story she appears in the background near Padraic, when he is waving goodbye to Siobhan. For the time, she is just observing the unfolding of the conflict, but not acting yet as she needs to be precise in her task. At the end though, the Banshee comes to Colm, reiterating that he was dying and signalizing that he was the one she was supposed to get. Sitting patiently in Colm's chair beside his burned house. Siobhan, the sister, is the one character that can see from a certain distance the ongoing repetitive drama of the play and decides to leave, as she was not really participating in it. Different from Colm, who now sees Padraic as a problem and takes a dramatic selfish decision to abandon him. I don't need you anymore, go away. She also cut ties with his brother, but in a way that would be good for both to grow up. I have to go, but still love you, leaving because there is a higher purpose, as her character is now needed in a different play. It is interesting to note how these 2 different characters, Siobhan and Colm, are presented. They seem opposites, but they share the same fate of wanting/having to leave Padraic. The scene where Siobhan goes to Colm's house and they talk is very interesting, as it reveals that he knows that she is also leaving Padraic, and since they share this common intention, he expects that she could understand the hidden reason for his apparent crazy actions, as he hints that he might be using Padraic as an entertainment, while awaits for the inevitable, possibly his death. And when he asks Siobhan if she was doing the same, she responds with a firmly no. At the end of this scenario, Colm might be just a desperate man, selfish but not an unemphatic sociopath, as he still shows care for Padraic. Siobhan is caring, but is not a saint, just a down-to-earth smart woman who just wants better things for her. Colm was using Padraic as an entertainment. We all use other people to diverge from our own misery, but his planned decision to cut ties created an unplanned opportunity to Padraic to growth individually. And Padraic was up to the challenge and responded accordingly, as he was dull but sharp, sensitive but strong. Dominic is the curious, naive but annoying child that no one has time to pay attention. The donkey is nature, the innocent collateral in any man's conflict. And the Banshee, a reminder that we are all just characters in God's cosmic play. And now, if you want, we can surface back to the metaphoric surface layer of the Irish Civil War and the loss of a more innocent time in Irish history, as sadder, colder, and darker times always come after any war. As from now on, the life in Inisherin, maybe Ireland in this context, would be less happy, with no more Colm's music, less caring and colorful, with no more Siobhan's love, less pure and naive, with no more Dominic's eyes, and less nice, with less Padraic openness. But in the long run, more mature, as Padraic himself wisely concludes, at the final scene at the beach. Some things there are no moving on from. And I think that's a good thing. In the first scenario, Padraic grows into a more mature man due to the unplanned consequences of selfish decisions made by a desperate Colm. And even though this one appears to be more plausible, one might argue that he does not appear selfish, crazy, or desperate enough to self-mutilate himself just to end a friendship. That is why I proposed a second one where Padraic goes to the same process of individual growth, but this time by consequence of an altruistic and conscious decision idealized by his friend. This proposal seems so braver and unselfish, to the point of being insane, that I doubted it for a minute. But after watching in Bruges the next day, by the same writer and director, I got my hope back on this possibility. In this light, maybe Colm's real intentions are really altruistic. He shows he still cares about Padraic even after the breakup, as we have seen in the scene when he helps Padraic after being beaten by the policeman. So why Colm does what he does? Meaning, why is so important to end their friendship to the point of cutting his fingers off? The answer might be sacrificial love. Knowing he is about to die, Colm wants to teach Padraic a last lesson. Something that would break the dynamics that are set and possibly push Padraic to grow up and stand for himself. As he knows that Padraic has this inner potential. Maybe like a good father would do to its son if he knew he was about to die and wanted to prepare him for the real world beforehand. Remember the things that Colm likes: music, puppeteering, and acting. And he has lots of time to create his final play. Note that they live in an island, away from the war, protected from conflicts. But conflicts and suffering are what help us grow. Within fixed and stable dynamics there are no room for change, and Colm knows that. And so, using elements of a puppet master, a composer, and an actor, he initiates a well-crafted conflict with Padraic, the abrupt termination of their friendship, which would then create the needed situations that would push Padraic to face his shadow sides, such as dependence, fear, angriness, jealousy, hate, and loneliness. For this to work, Colm would have to become a selfish, rude, and egotistical man, only preoccupied by his creative musical legacy. Or at least would have to act as such. The hardline boundaries and the finger-cutting threats made by Colm puts Padraic in a new challenging position of choices, with new and real bloodily caused consequences dynamics, like in a real war. Colm would rather sacrifice his fingers just to liberate his friend by a means of a lesson of hard consequences, as Padraic's growth and his realization of his free will and judgment was more important than any other thing that he could have used for his hand. In this context, the music legacy being just a planned excuse, as he knew he could not play any more without fingers. Colm's commitment was full, and he was willing to amputate himself. Remember the film, The Prestige? Or even losing his house and other to complete his master play. Remember how Colm was too cool about the whole thing, just as if he had planned it all along, and was serene about the consequences, as long as they were on his side. But things escalate, and the donkey's death becomes a collateral to his plan. This is another hint that he might be just acting selfish, as he was sorry for it to have happened. Also note that Colm didn't let himself die in the burning house. He as well could have, as he knew he was about to die anyways. But he didn't want his death on Padraic consciousness. That would make him a somber man, and that was not his intention. His real legacy would be a stronger, more independent, and more mature Padraic. And the plan works. At the end, although loneliness, loss, and sadness become part of Padraic's life, he still keeps his good heart, as he would still takes care of the dog of his enemy, anytime. There is also a religious mythological theme in this Irish story, if you like to go even deeper. Just like Padraic, Adam and Eve got expelled from paradise, a protected place, for eating the forbidden fruit of knowledge. God set an explicit boundary with hard consequences, but man crossed it and lost his place in heaven, and now they will have to growth by their own means, the loss of innocence. Man gains knowledge and free will, and with it, the power to influence his own life and the life of others, but at the cost of his divine connection. So, maybe this is a metaphor about God and mankind, a puppet master who, for the love for his creation, was willing to cut his connection with them, in order to give free will to his puppets even though they might use it to hate him in the end. The fall from the Paradise Tale. Something has to be said about the outstanding directing, writing, acting, music, and photography. The acting is superb from all the cast. All the words that comes out of Padraic's mouth are brilliant, and with perfect grade of intonation. Colm says more with his general semblance, with his postures, gestures, faces, and looks. The photography is beautiful, on the internal as well on the external shots. Note the sunsets, the mountains, the silence. And the music matches all the nuances. The attention to detail in the scenes are fantastic, with the placements of objects, colors, and even sounds. Note that 2 o'clock reminder of their friendship pub time is the same as the ending of it, when the house burns, marking the end of a cycle. Thank you for watching.